This week, we are plunging into the deeply psychological and intense world of chess story. We are examining Stefan Zweig's final harrowing novella, where a game of strategy becomes, well, a desperate metaphor for mental survival and the fate of cultured Europe. We're diving into the atmosphere of exile, World War II, and that agonizing sense of a civilization just vanishing. I'm your host, and welcome to The Deep Dive.
And our mission today is to quickly synthesize the brilliance and, frankly, the despair contained in this text. Completed just before Zweig took his own life in 1942, the novella, Schachnovelle in German, is often seen as his final cry, a profound grief over the rise of totalitarian barbarism. It's quite something.
It really is a powerhouse of compressed tragedy. But before we get too deep into the torment, maybe let's talk structure for a second. Why is the intense feeling of this work so unforgettable?
I think it's the framework, definitely. The novella uses this dense frame narrative structure. We meet the narrator on a steamship. He's observing the action, almost like us, the readers. This structure allows Zweig to present Dr. B's unbelievable story as a reliable recollection, filtered through a detached observer. It immediately sets the stage for a duel, not just chess, but civilization versus, well, pure function.
Pure function is a good way to put it. And the most immediate representation of that pure function is our first face of genius, Mirko Centovic. We meet him on the steamer from New York to Buenos Aires as the reigning world chess champion.
Centovic is just a stunning creation. Zweig sketches him perfectly. A dull, taciturn peasant who possesses this singular, almost frightening skill set. But outside of the 64 squares, he has this universal lack of culture, as Zweig calls it, incapable of intellectual thought, social grace, or even, basic grammar.
It's such a bizarre dichotomy. He's discovered as a child in some remote Slavic village, learns the game almost by, brute repetition, and becomes world champion at 20. Wealthy, famous, unbeatable, yet intellectually just, inert.
And this is where the symbolism really starts to bite, I think. What's fascinating is his fundamental limitation. He cannot play blind. He can't play from memory. He always requires the physical board right there in front of him. And this isn't just a technical oversight. Zweig makes it clear this inability betrays a deep lack of imaginative power. There's no internal reflective life there.
I see the critique. He can calculate moves, but he can't envision the game abstractly. He operates only in the immediate physical reality.
Exactly. Centovic embodies what Zweig saw conquering Europe. A crude, soulless, mechanical barbarism. He's pure function, completely devoid of humanism or reflection. And Zweig doesn't spare him culturally either. He portrays his miserly, even vulgar greed, charging these exorbitant fees, a minimum of $250 a game.
Which was a fortune back then.
A huge fortune, and shamelessly selling his name for a ghost-written, utterly ludicrous philosophy of chess. His functional genius is harnessed solely for crude exploitation.
But doesn't that maybe risk simplifying the critique a bit? Is Zweig saying all focused genius is dangerous? Or is it specifically genius that lacks culture, lacks that human element? Centovic's greed seems almost like a critique of maybe capitalistic exploitation of raw talent rather than fascism itself, or that reading too much into it.
Well, it's likely both, but I think the emphasis is really on the lack of soul. The fact that Centovic is so easily monetized, so easily bought, it just underscores how mechanical power, when it's devoid of any moral context, can be used for crass ends. His mind is essentially a machine, right? And machines are easily bought and directed. That singular focus, and crucially that lack of foresight, made him, in Zweig's eyes, a perfect avatar for the era's destructive forces.
Okay, that makes sense. That really sets the stage then for the intervention. The wealthy passenger, Macaulay, challenges Centovic, and the group of amateur players is just getting trounced.
Losing badly.
And that's when Dr. B, this mysterious Austrian gentleman, steps in.
Yes, Dr. B offers advice that saves the second game. He calculates, 9 moves ahead with his surgical precision and forces an immediate draw. This sudden, almost otherworldly intervention just opens the door to the real heart of the novella, Dr. B's backstory.
And his story is the psychological core of the work, absolutely. He was an aristocratic Viennese lawyer arrested by the Gestapo right after the Anschluss. And he wasn't targeted for political activism, interestingly, but for information about assets hidden abroad by his client's royalty, clergy.
Right, and the Gestapo's method here is just crucial. They recognize the power of psychological warfare over simple physical torture, at least in his case. Dr. B was subjected to total isolation in a sealed hotel room, what Zweig calls a total vacuum. He writes that chilling line, "Nothing on earth puts more pressure on the human mind than nothing."
The sensory deprivation is just staggering to think about. No clock, no books, no paper, no pencils, no human voice, except for these sporadic, terror-inducing interrogations. He was driven right to the brink of collapse by the sheer emptiness.
Yeah, the goal wasn't to break his body, it was to shatter his mind from the inside out, forcing this internal collapse that would lead to confession. And he was almost there. The critical turn is the theft. In an anteroom, waiting, he manages to pocket a book from a guard's coat. Just an impulse.
And this is the moment of incredibly ironic salvation, isn't it? The book turns out to be, well, merely an anthology of 150 master chess games. A desperate distraction.
Initially, yes, it's a lifeline. He uses the checkered pattern on his bedspread and tiny crumbs of bread to recreate the games. He memorizes them all as this intense mental exercise. And for a time, it works. It restores his mental acuity, as Zweig puts it, and prevents total madness. But then he exhausts those 150 games.
Right. And that's when the mechanism of survival twists and turns against him. He starts playing against himself. Black me versus white me. And this isn't just a fun mental exercise anymore. It requires, as Zweig describes it, a total division of consciousness. He needs to think as two distinct minds, completely opposing each other, all inside one skull. That's where salvation becomes a new internalized curse.
Precisely. This forced internal division is the absolute definition of his pathological condition. Some commentators have called it sétrance de Herlenmessie chess sickness or chess poisoning. It's a trauma-induced pathological mental overstimulation, and it manifests with physical symptoms: fever, tremors, this inability to concentrate on external reality.
Wow. If we look at this through a psychological lens, the Freudian or maybe Jungian connections are just screaming at us, aren't they? He's literally fragmenting his own ego just to survive. He has to create an antagonist within himself because the external world offers nothing but a void.
And that void brings us straight to the existential echoes in the text. In the face of the meaninglessness and isolation imposed by the Nazi regime, Dr. B desperately tries to create meaning through the abstract strategy of chess. It's all he has left. But this very effort to anchor himself in logic becomes a self-destructive mania. The meaning he creates is ultimately arbitrary, it's isolating, and it becomes pathological. He found a structure to fight the void, but in doing so, he essentially became his own jailer.
That's such a powerful insight. He substitutes the external prison with an internal one. The game is his only window out, but it's also the bars of his new cell. So, thinking about this profound tragic backstory, and Dr. B's resulting mental fragmentation, his obsession, what stands out to you, our listeners? Does this portrait, this intense psychological state, align with a character you had previously imagined? Share your thoughts on how trauma can shape or even shatter the internal world. Now let's get back to the steamship deck for that confrontation. Dr. B agrees to one game against Centovich. He says he needs to know, needs to test himself. Were his prison games real chess or madness?
He wins that first game with shocking speed and ease. It almost validates his strange, tortured mastery. But the rematch, that's where Centovich reveals his true predatory nature.
Yes, the champion senses Dr. B's extreme fragility, his visible agitation. Centovich shifts tactics completely. He moves away from just technical chess to psychological warfare. He adopts his tactic of extreme slowness, taking the maximum 10 minutes allowed for every single move. He's deliberately using the clock as a torture device.
It's chilling. He's mimicking the slow, agonizing passage of time in Dr. B's prison cell.
Absolutely masterful storytelling by Zweig there. The delay immediately triggers the chess sickness again. Dr. B's frenzy flares right back up. And he begins pacing the deck, unconsciously tracing the exact dimensions of his former prison room. He becomes, as Zweig puts it, a caged animal relapsing into his trauma. He starts confusing the real game with those endless imaginary duels he fought against himself in the isolation room.
And the climax is just unbearable. Dr. B spirals completely out of control, screaming checkmate after the 19th move, only it's an impossible move. He's completely lost sight of the real board, utterly overwhelmed by the phantom games raging inside his own head.
This is the moment the host, the narrator figure in the story, intervenes. He gently touches the scar on Dr. B's hand.
Yeah.
A physical mark from when he shattered the window glass during his initial breakdown back in prison. That tiny physical reminder of a real-world wound somehow pulls him back to lucidity.
That physical tether is so critical. Dr. B instantly realizes he's relapsed. He apologizes very formally and withdraws. He declares he will never play chess again. His goal wasn't beating Centovich ultimately, it was testing his sanity. And his victory, in a way, was recognizing the danger and choosing self-preservation over the game. He steps back from the brink.
And Centovich. the symbol of that crude barbarism, he remains utterly untouched by the human drama unfolding. He just coolly sweeps the pieces off the board.
Accepts the emotional surrender, yeah. He thereby forces the cultured amateur to concede, even though the game itself wasn't technically finished. He wins by default, almost.
The symbolic weight of that withdrawal is really Zweig's final metaphor, isn't it? Dr. B's retreat from the board represents the total withdrawal of cultured humanist Europe, or what was left of it, from the face of the new, mechanical, barbarous world order. He chose sanity, perhaps, over engagement with this terrifying new reality.
It's a powerful testament to the destructive power of isolation, isn't it? And the fragile line between intellectual discipline and pathological obsession. The story shows us that sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to play the game.
So if we try to connect this to the bigger picture, does the iconic symbol of the chessboard truly carry only its visible meaning of strategy? Or does it perhaps represent a much deeper, universal concept of internal mental warfare, the war against the self?
And the essential question really is, if Dr. B had achieved his goal, if he had fully defeated Chentovich in that final game, would he truly have found peace? Would he have been happy? Or would the sickness just have found another form?
The struggle was never really about the score on the board, was it? It was about the survival of the self. That's the painful, unresolved question Zweig leaves hanging over the deck of that ship. This week, we were in the deeply psychological and intense world of chess story. We look forward to you joining us with your comments before we dive into a new work next week. Farewell for now. Continue to read and question here on The Deep Dive.